Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to week 9 of the Roots and Reckonings of this 20-week series that I'm doing. Now, just to give a little bit of perspective before I start on this, what the hell experience and expertise do I have to be talking about expatriation and alienation when finding home won't claim you? Well, I've lived and worked and traveled to 47 countries around the world at present. There's still a long way to go until I get all the way around the world, but I also have about 20,000 deep blue ocean miles that took me around the world. And for those of you who are not familiar with the term deep blue, that means a wide open ocean where the land is closest to you beneath you than it is in landmass. So I do, and I've also lived in several countries for long periods of time, such as four years. I think my longest in one place. And remember, some of these countries are quite small, so I don't need to be there for very long. I think the shortest amount of time, other than the countries I've traveled through, like Singapore, I can't say I've lived in Singapore because I only stayed in the airport for about 12 hours. So I don't include those. So I have seen the world. I have immersed myself in culture and within the communities, and not just one level of society of communities, but I've lived and worked and networked and lived amongst people from all stages of the community, from the upper class to the working class, and those who don't really have class systems in their countries. They are just people. So that is what gives me the expertise and the experience to actually deliver this to you. And also, I'd like to apologise for those of you who joined me for last week and signed up to receive the recording. There were some sound issues, so I'm going to re-record it. Wish me luck on that one, because these, as you can tell, these are not scripted. These are just in the moment, me delivering what I know and what I feel. So let's get started on week 9, expatriation and alienation. So obviously expatriation comes from migration, and looking at how some people are immigrants and some people are immigrants if we're looking at one particular country. If we actually look at things on a very realistic level, many of us, if not a large, very large percentage of us, are all immigrants in the country of the land that we're living in. There are very few people that can say that they're not an immigrant of maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 generations. So, you know, the United States, everyone that lives there, apart from the indigenous communities, they're all immigrants. Canada, the same. Australia, the same. So let's put things into perspective when we're looking at this. Most of the people that are here in Britain that like to think that they are English, if we look at their genealogy, they've probably got some German in them, they've probably got some African in them, they've probably got some, I don't know, Croatian in them. So do any of us really have the right to say that we are natives to our homeland, the land that we've chosen or the land that we were born in? So I really do want to get that made clear very beginning, because lots of people have this identity, especially here in America. Here, I'm not in America at the moment, but in North America and in Britain, and also in Australia, there's some really gnarly attitudes in those countries, in all countries, where if you're not from here, if you weren't born here, you don't belong here. So go back to your own country. Well, which one would that be? And why should we? And if we did go home to our own country, how many pieces would I need to cut myself into to actually get there? So again, and people, they think that their passport or the place of their birth gives them rights over that land. And that's not actually true. It just means that we just happen to have been born in a certain country at a certain time. And it could have been while our parents were traveling, it could have been while they were working overseas or they were studying overseas, or that it's that your grandparents were born here. And again, it's about what are we actually looking at when we're talking about identity? You know, what makes me English? The fact that I drink tea at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or the fact that I have a British accent, depending on if I've not spoken to my friends in Australia or the States or in Mexico or wherever. What is it about identity? What makes us, what makes me English? Is it the fact that I've probably actually lived, calculating, I lived outside of England more than I've lived in it now at this point. And I only have a British passport, but even having the blue British passport really annoys me right now because I want my European passport back. I really want my European passport back, but there we go. That's a whole other conversation. But again, one of the things we look at is the I've mentioned here the invisible loneliness behind the adventurous expat narrative, because it is very real. It's very accurate. There are a lot of people who have gone and lived this expat lifestyle. It seems very luxurious, whether you're your spouse or whether it's yourself that is an ambassador, works at the embassy, or is a diplomat, or you've gone out teaching and you're working in this exotic land. There are certain things you do miss from home. And I know that when I was probably about 3.5 years away from having lived in Britain, I miss things such as lemon curd, like proper lemon curd. Um, and I'm no good at baker. I'm not lemon curd, like it would curd of a different kind. And again, it's like little things that you miss. Is it like a particular biscuit, or is it the fact that the water that tastes lovely, or the fact that you haven't got all of your friends or all the modern conveniences? Because loneliness actually um, gets us in ways. It's not just about the friends that we have close by. It's not that people understand our humor, although I don't think anyone really understands my humor a lot of the time. But loneliness presents in lots of different ways. Is it the fact that our books, like for me as a reader, like I miss bookshops, and those and the library systems, and they make me feel at home. And like, or having someone wave to you as you walk down the street, and then you find out they don't actually know you. They were just actually like making you realize that there was something coming about to hit you. Again, it's someone like there's a great American sitcom called Frasier. That you go to a bar where everybody knows your name. Is that the kind of thing that you're missing out on from home? So we're going to be touching on that. And then the tension between assimilation, resistance, and authenticity. Another, quite authenticity is a word that gets bandied around a lot, but genuineness. But are we looking at assimilation, or are we looking at integration? Again, when we're raising our kids, we don't want them to be independent from us, but we want them to be interdependent. So again, looking at the words in which we're using, and I know that my title was a bit of a clickbait one. I'm trying to get away from those, but they do tend to get people's attention. Imagine if we could just have nice titles that were really inviting. And then, looking at what, like I said, what home means when it's not tied to a particular place. Is home within you? Is home where you lay your hat? Is home where you can make a fresh cup of tea? Again, very British of me. Not very English, but very British. And what does the weight of your backpack or the size of your shipping container say about you? So there are some of the things that we're going to cover today. I'm very excited about this one because this is something I'm very passionate about. But I wanted to, again, as a second slide always, and it's very predictable. I wanted to bring, we're having some really nasty things happening here in Britain at the moment, where there's a lot of alienation to people who don't belong here. Yes, I am making fun of the ignorant masses that belong within the EDL, the English Defence League, and the Britain First kind of people, and the Tommy Robinsons of the world, when they're talking about, you've got like this Reform Party led by the I can't even think of a word to describe him, Nigel Farage, and his racism policies, where they're really getting on the immigration issue. But when we actually look at the net migration of Britain, and also with the States, we're looking at that. But Britain, I'm going to just focus on the figures for Britain today. Net migration is actually down by almost 50% than what it was last year and the year before. And when we have to look at migration, we're looking at why people migrate, which I'll come on to on the next slide. But I wanted to just put these figures out there because the number of people immigrating minus the number of people emigrating, because this is something that the figures that are shared with these evil politicians like Nigel Farage. One of the things that they don't actually look at, they just band out all of these number of immigrants coming into our countries and taking it over and stealing all our women and taking all the jobs and stealing all our qualifications while we're just lazy little shits that sit on the couch all day scrolling through Netflix and Facebook or down the pub drinking beer, because that makes us really British. And they never actually weigh up the people that are emigrating and why people are doing both. But the net migration we had was about 431,000 in December 2024, compared with 860,000 a year earlier. And there's a decrease in immigration from non-EU nationals on a work to study related visa. And then again, this is the thing, we're not just looking at people that are coming into this country as asylum seekers or refugees for political refugees. We're actually looking at people who, because a lot of the English can't be bothered to do certain jobs or don't think they're above certain jobs, we actually have people come from other countries to do these jobs, who are grateful and gracious, and it's an honor for them to work to earn their keep rather than being on the benefits and what have you. And they come to this country because we have a good education system. It used to be a great one, but even that's gone down the toilet to some degree. And if we got rid of, there was a program several years ago, the day that immigrants left, and where I grew up, we had we did have quite a lot of rural racism. I mentioned it in the book that inspired this series, Friday Bridge. It was racism, raving, and religion. And we were looking at the day that immigrants left. It was by the guy who presented Dragon's Den. And before it even aired, I said, you know what, I know what's going to be like, they're going to have to make up wages. They're going to be like, the English people are not going to work. The economy would fall over if we didn't have the immigrants in this country. Again, it's about looking at why people come here to work, and why is it any different that the white English people go to places like Switzerland to earn money to send back to their families, or they go to America to get a job, or to go to Australia to get a job, or they go to some of the developing Eastern Bloc countries to do construction work and send money home to their families because they can earn a lot more money out there. But it's not okay for the brown folks of the world to do the same. So again, let's look at why migration is happening. Like I've said at the last bit here, the increase in immigration over the 18 months is up since December at the end of December 2024, because people who originally came here to study, who actually then decided to set up home here and applied for citizenship, have actually gone, you know what, it's not a very welcoming place anymore. There are things, or we miss the sunshine, or we miss our families, or our families are aging. We don't actually look at the reasons why. So there are lots and lots of reasons for migration. And now I've just presented those figures. All of these figures, they do come from the Office of National Statistics. They've come from the government website, as much as you can trust the government. But there are also looking at the Refugee Council, and then like migration, lots of different. So I've been looking at them, but most of these figures you will find a variation of a theme on the Office of National Statistics and gov.uk if you'd like to do your own research. Again, I invite you to challenge anything that I say, because this is time-stamped. You'll notice I always put the date at the beginning. So if there's anything that you disagree with, or if there's something that you feel that I should have included, then do let me know. Sharing of knowledge is one of my passions. So let's get into the guts of it then, shall we? So expatriation. Now, as I mentioned in the first slide, lots of people think that being an expat is very glamorous. You're going to these tropical places, coffee and lunching if you're a lady. You probably don't have to work, you can stay at home, you can go, the strength of the pound or the strength of the dollar against everybody else's currency. It's really great. And then what happens? People say, oh, okay, well, they're expats, so they're making more money, so we can. I remember when I was in Egypt, I was taking a friend to the airport. And we were in a white taxi, and the taxi driver tried to charge us nearly 5 times the amount because he thought that I was just there on holiday or or whatever. But the thing is, you get to learn the culture when you're in it. Well, if you don't live in gated communities and isolate yourself from the locals. Now, whenever I live in a country, I actually go and live amongst the locals where they don't speak English, unless that English is their mother tongue, of a variety. And I learn about the culture, I learn about the food, the music, I learn about the history, the politics, and I really get involved. And so this taxi driver tried to charge me more. And my response was, Aib. For those of you who are not familiar with the word "ayib," this means shame on you, shame on your culture, literally translated. And he was a bit shocked. I was like, "Ana arif, I know. And I live here." And again, I speak in Arabic to him. I was like, "I live here. I know how much this ride is. You can try and, steal from me." And I did call him a thief, and he wasn't very happy. But when the expatriation, you've got to expect things like that, because if you're going around lording it up, and isolating yourself and not integrating, then people will take you for a fool, because, well, you kind of really are if you're not integrating into the community and the land that you've chosen to go and live in. Now, whether you're expatriating because of work for maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years, or maybe forever, um, you have to integrate. It's bloody rude not to. If you live in a country for longer than a year and you haven't even learnt the basics of that language, then shame on you. Really, shame on you. Um, and again, this is why people get rejected from the place in which they're calling their homeland. If you've not bothered to learn the language, age is not an issue. And because the thing is, I've studied, when I was learning Arabic, at a very high level when I lived out in Egypt. There were two people, I will never forget them. They were a beautiful couple, and they were in their late 80s, and they were there learning Arabic because they were traveling through the Arab world. And they'd come from the States, and they wanted to learn about the Arab world instead of having the media propaganda blinding them to what was actually true. And one of the things that um, you tend to find is people don't, if you're not bothering and just being respectful enough to learn the language of the people of the land that you're living in, what an arrogant little shit you are, really. Um, like, people here in Britain, there are a very small minority, and I will say it is a small minority. They tend to go to different countries, and then they think that talking louder will help people understand them, even though they're still saying the same words. And people are like, "Oh, no, I don't speak English. Me not speak English." And sometimes um, I find myself observing this behavior, and then one of these individuals, I've seen it when I visited certain Spanish countries, and they try and get you to back them up, and I'm like, me not speak English. And I'll start speaking Spanish, and I'll talk to the Spanish people, and then we'll start laughing together, and then I'll acknowledge the people who refuse to speak English. And because the thing is, refuse to speak Spanish, because if you're going to be so territorial about your own homeland, and then you go over to somebody else's homeland, and you don't integrate, and you don't learn not even the basics of hello, thank you, please excuse me. I mean, the fact that you don't have the manners enough to learn the basics, you probably wouldn't be using please and thank you and excuse me anyway. But the learning the language is really, really strong. Learn the customs. Don't put your feet, if you're going to China, to the Far East, like China, or you're going to any Arab country, or Muslim country, um, take your shoes off. When you enter, take your shoes off anyway. Even in Switzerland, take your shoes off. Sweden, take your shoes off. Take your shoes off when you enter the house. It's dirty not to. Really, it really is. And don't put your feet up on the table. There was a concierge here where I live, and I was talking to him, and he put his feet up on the desk. He was facing me with his feet. I was like, "Excuse me, why are you showing me the soles of your feet? Is that what you think? Like I'm nothing more than something on the bottom of your shoe? That's what you?" And he hadn't even. And this was somebody who had traveled the world with the military, and I was absolutely disgusted. I was like, "How dare you? That is so rude. One, you're at work. Have some professionalism." But again, not everybody has this awareness. Not everybody wants to have the awareness. And again, it's like looking at how we shift our identities. Like when someone's a bit friendly or somebody, he thought that because I'm a friendly person, he could just chill out at work. No, you're at work, dude. You have a level of professionalism. I'm not your friend. I'm somebody who lives here. You're the concierge. Unless I become friends with you, like there's a lovely David. Sorry, Andrew. I keep calling him David for some reason. I have no idea why. Sorry, Andrew, if you're watching. But again, when we're looking at what is here, what is there, you don't belong here, or I don't belong there. Like, what is this? We belong anywhere we choose to. And it's the very idea that we own where we live or where we were born. And I'll come on to that as well. It's a bit of an illusion and a delusion, because none of us own the land. The land belongs to it and of itself. Our children don't even belong to the parents. They certainly don't belong to the state. We are all individual sovereign individuals with our own agency. And so when we're looking at these identities, that for me, sometimes I struggle. Where do I belong? And what is my homeland? Because now that I've lived and worked and traveled to 47 countries, it's like, when I'm thinking, what is food? What I want food from home. Where is that food? What food is that? And it tends to be either Latino or it tends to be Arabic food, and also roast lamb. I mean, I am living in Wales. Can't beat a bit of roast lamb, and the dog loves the bones as well. So, making bone broth for her at the moment. And again, we're looking at how this migration and this fact that we think we own the land or that we can take that land from somebody else, i.e., what we're seeing in Palestine at the moment. We're seeing, this huge displacement of a people just because we think that, just because a small group of people who think that they should own and dominate everybody else, they think that they own that land. And it's really quite interesting seeing the psyche fracture of some of the people who are waking up to what's actually really going on out there. You've got some Israelis that are living out in the States, or they're like, I never knew, because one, they've been indoctrinated by the mass media in the States, and they haven't even bothered to look outside of their own home. And this is why expatriation is so, when you do go and be an expat, when you're integrating into your local community or into your city, travel, find out what's going on in the country, because you'll be quite shocked. When I lived out in Egypt and I found out that a lot of Egyptians don't even acknowledge Nubians from Nueva, I was quite shocked, because it is part of Egypt, but because they're so black, they're not really Egyptians. They kind of are. But again, political elements. The Nubians, like down in Nueva, it's a beautiful part, and gosh, such beautiful people. So what are the boundaries? And again, if you're going to Iran, is it Persia or is it Iran? When there are certain parts of, when people talk about South Africa, they mean the southern part of Africa rather than the country South Africa. And then we look at the apartheid there, the Dutch going over, and taking what they thought was theirs, and they had a right to, and all this ownership we've got to look at what's actually going on, because if you're going to a country and you're not exploring and you're not understanding the culture, the history, the politics, how are you adding to the oppression of the people there? How are you alienating the people there? And I know that we're looking at when your homeland won't claim you. But again, if you are choosing to go and live in another country, these are some of the reasons why your new homeland won't claim you, because you're ignorant. You don't have the manners to learn the language and the culture practice. And again, to share a personal situation, when I went to visit family in Lebanon, I offered everybody a cup of tea. It was the afternoon. Of course, I offer everybody a cup of tea in the afternoon. I hadn't realized, my very first time of being in Lebanon, I hadn't realized that tea is something you offer as a nudge to go home. Such as like in Morocco, when they start burning the incense sticks, or the Egyptians, they start bringing out the coffee. It's the end of the evening. You need coffee. You've got a long drive home. Well, probably not a long drive home, but it will be a lengthy drive home, because, 1 mile in Egypt might take you 2 hours to drive, especially if you're traveling along the Corniche. So again, know the customs. And this is becoming quite an issue for a lot of people who are claiming to be nomads, digital nomads, people who are living a location-free lifestyle. They're migrants, and some people don't like to admit that about themselves, and they have privilege. If you are able to live location-free, like I was for 7.5 years of non-stop traveling around the world, I lived a nomadic life, and nomads are, as old as the sailors, the Badawis of the Arab world. You've got the gypsies, and the people like the farmers of the Hindu Kush, and all of these different areas, because they're moving to find food, they're moving to find shelter, they're moving for seasonal work, and the caravanserais that we're seeing, and there's such, when I'm writing a book at the moment about nomadism, and so that will be coming out next year, hopefully. It's nearly finished. And I go into the history of nomadism, and what it actually means and why people migrated. Because again, some people, like I said, are doing it for work. They're doing it to find food, to plant new fruit. They're doing it to trade. They're doing it to learn and study. Some people are doing it because they're hobbies. Some people are leaving, like they really love climbing, and where they're living doesn't offer them that ability to climb. And are we looking at migrating within a nation, or within a country? So like, and I need to make this distinction, because somebody asked me this the other week. When I say that, Britain is a nation, it's not a country. Britain is not a country. Britain is a nation. Wales, England, and Scotland and Ireland, they're different countries. So they all make up the nation. Now, some Cornish people would say that they're not part of England. Kudos to those Cornish people. Again, knowing your history, and land borders. And so again, it's about understanding, if you live in the flatlands of Norfolk, in England, the Fens, you might want to move closer to the Peak District, because there's more climbing there. Or you might actually want to go and live in Nepal. Lots of climbing there. You might want to come and live in Snowdonia region of Wales. Again, is your hobby taking you somewhere? Can your hobby take you somewhere all over the world? And again, when we're traveling, do we feel an arrogance over our passport, over somebody else's passport? Or like me, like, oh, sorry, I've got a blue British passport rather than my lovely purple, or aubergine European passport. How are we allowing the identity of our passport to play with our minds? And when we're traveling, I know that my passport will get me into my new passport will get me into a lot of countries. My old passport, that was a European one, because of all the stamps it had in them, there are lots of stamps in that passport that wouldn't allow me access to other countries. Most of them were on a red list, printed by or published by the US or by the British government. because we can't have you going to those countries, they're dangerous. Again, look at the reasons why they're saying that they're dangerous. We're coming on to that. And again, are we saying that because we have a certain passport or a certain ethnicity that we have more rights to travel than somebody else? No, we don't. We have more privilege, and we are privileged to be able to travel. But with the freedom to travel comes a sense of responsibility. Responsibility to learn the culture, responsibility to understand how our lives have afforded us the freedoms, and how the lifestyles and the politics and the history, especially the British, the people from the colonies, and what we have done to other countries, that have and we allow to keep happening, that actually prevents other people from traveling. These are all things that will actually help you when you understand these. Find your home wherever that is. And being on the outside of communities, we know when you first arrive, if you pay attention and you observe, you start to witness some really beautiful exchanges. You see how people's hand gestures, and you also see a lot of funny ones as well. You see how people's hand gestures, how they move their bodies within each other, how they greet each other, how they eat, what they're eating. Spend some time when you visit a country, learning and observing the locals. How are they drinking their coffee? Are they drinking? So when my youngest son and I, we were just in Croatia, and we noticed that the tables in Britain, what would have been a table for two in Britain, were a table for 4, 5, and 6 people in Croatia, because going out for coffee, again, the same for Sweden, going out for coffee is a very social thing. Learn that, the people in Croatia will argue with you over who's going to pay. We had a beautiful experience. We hadn't realized that, a lot of places in Zagreb, it's cash only. And we expected to be able to pay by card. Foolish on my part, given my extensive knowledge and travel. We were like, okay, well, we need to go to a cash point. And this gentleman, complete stranger, no, 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 you're a guest in my country. Let me pay. Let me pay. And we were like, really? Serious? And he was like, yes, 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 yes. And again, this is very typical of the Croatian culture. People are very generous. And it was a coffee, and the places were small, but they were cozy and they were intimate, and people were sitting together. Now, imagine if that was here in Britain. Oh no, I need my space. I need my bubble. I need at least a meter around me. Don't come too close to me. I actually met a lady last week at an event that I was at. I walked up to her, and we were a good meter away. And the closer I got to her, the further she moved. I was like, "Sorry, did you not want? You just said you wanted to, come up to you, and now that we're coming up to you, you're moving away from us. So, you know, listen to what you're saying, and respond accordingly." There is quite a bit of snobbery in a lot of countries, obviously, and people's bubbles are larger and smaller, and the way people greet each other. There is, again, people that work in certain circles or in certain sectors. They think that they're better than others. They're not. If I cut you, you will still bleed, and if I kick you, you will still bruise. We are all humans, and again, it's about looking at how your country mannerisms, and how certain words that you're saying, and certain ways that you're standing, what is that saying about you, but also um what is that projecting onto other people? So for example, like I said, the concierge who had his feet upon the table because he was so at home, when when he's supposed to be at work, and he's got his feet upon the table. Like, I still can't get over that. I mean, goodness gracious. But again, looking at I just said goodness gracious, and one of the things I learned when I was in Colombia, there was a guy who was British who was living in Belafonte, great co-living space if you're ever in Santa Marta, Colombia, run by Pau and Chopper. And this guy goes, "Oh, it's a proper cup of tea," and I started laughing, because in Britain we say everything's proper. It's a proper sideboard, that's a proper cup of tea. Oh, that's a proper Yorkshire pudding. Everything's proper. Or to be fair. And how are these phrases that we're saying, like the North Americans, they'll say anyways. It's not anyways, it's anyway. And it is grammatically incorrect, even in North America. It's not just me being a British English snob. Even in North America, anyways, is not correct spoken English. So, but again, looking at how you can use these things to build bridges and go, oh yeah, like we say this, or how do you say this? Invite people. Looking at how people are connecting with each other, or if they're eating certain things. Like there's a Malaysian food, like the Malaysians they pour so much love into their food. The Arabs do as well, and Latinos. It's like they're feeders. So if you're there picking around on your salad plate and pushing your food around, you're going to be quite offensive. But if you're in there full hands in, when I eat a lot of food, I tend to eat with my hands a lot of time. I get the bread or I get the lettuce leaf and I scoop up the rice and the meat. And, that's just how we eat in the Arab world and in Latin America. It's very, with the tacos and, burritos and things like that. And, mashi, and it's just the way we eat. It's very proper to have a knife and fork. And we eat pizza with our hands, and people that eat pizza with knife and fork, I still haven't quite got that idea yet. Again, and it's not, are other people not making you feel welcome, but how are you alienating yourself by holding on tight to things that you think are proper or polite or good manners. Like the British, we are so overly polite and we queue for everything. We would probably queue up for our own funeral and then apologize for dying, because we love apologizing and we love queuing. Is it really necessary? If you're in a country where queuing is not a thing and apologizing for even existing, um, can you learn to let go of those? It is an unlearning of who you are, but the more you learn about others, the more you learn about yourself, the more you learn about how other people do things. A lot of the time you think, oh my God, that's really, why do we do that? That is so ridiculous. Why do we do that? You learn so much about yourself. You get, that's actually a much better way of doing things. Or actually, I think I prefer our way of doing things. But are you doing it with the right intention? Are you doing it to embrace culture, or just make sure that you're more superior? Again, looking from the outside in often brings a lot of joy. And again, it is a chance to start again, and to refresh yourself, like a reboot. But also, people ask me why I came to Wales rather than staying in England. And I was like, because I didn't know anybody here. I didn't want to go back to Sheffield, although there are some very lovely people that I know in Sheffield. But there were just too many bad memories for me in Sheffield. There were a lot of good memories, but the bad were a lot more severe and started to outweigh the good. And I needed a reset. So coming to Wales, people here are a lot more relaxed as well. There's obviously a lot more ocean, sailing clubs in a very near vicinity here in Cardiff. Love it. Got the Jurassic coastline. Again, what is it about the place that you're moving to? Like I said, there's a lot of sailing clubs here. Wales is this part of Wales is very outdoorsy. Lots of trails, lots of parks, lots of water. There are new opportunities for me here. And I also have this Celtic heritage that just settles when I'm in Wales. When I go out, oh my gosh, there's just an element of peace here for now. And again, is this my ancestral home that I'm connecting with at the moment? What is that beauty, that peace that I'm gaining? And I don't feel, when I go to where I grew up, I don't resonate with it anymore. It's a very low vibrational place. It's not my space. There are no bookshops. I mean, come on, seriously, there are no bookshops. How could I live there? No bookshops. You know, there's lots of vapors as well. I can't be doing the vapors. An air freshener that attacks you as you walk past it. Well, what is that? Who came up with that idea? Really, seriously. And again, these are my prejudices from where I grew up. But again, we have them in all the new places. There are certain things that, like I said, we hang on to from our culture. And I say a lot today. I don't know why I'm doing that. Just said it again. The all of this cultural uh and these cultural mannerisms and the way in which we do things, and we hang on to them. What is that baggage you're hanging on to? Because there is something there. Why is it you're not willing to release that in order to be accepted, in order to integrate and just be part of a really beautiful flow of energy in your new homeland? uh what are the stories that you're telling? What are the stories that you've heard? Are they, prejudicial? Are they the news channels propagating a government agenda? How are you getting rid of all of that? Because remember, they're not yours. They're not your true beliefs. If you've borrowed them from the media, or you've borrowed them from your parents, or you've borrowed them from the government, these are not really your beliefs. And this is why when I work with people on writing a book or doing the narrative coaching with them, and I get them to write down, what is it that you truly believe? And then I challenge them. Okay, well, if you believe that, so do you believe this? And I use exactly their reasoning in a very different scenario. And then we start to break it down. And sometimes it can be painful for people to break that down. But again, this is why travel is so beautiful, and writing is such a beautiful experience, because you're actually getting present to who you truly are. There's been so many times I've written something down, I've gone, oh, well, that shows me an ignorance. Or that shows me a prejudice about myself, or about others from myself. Well, if I believe that, then using that logic and that narrative framework, if I applied it to that, okay, I need to do some deeper work. And that's one of the beautiful things about traveling and about writing that I have found so beneficial for my life and a lot of my clients' lives. Just because I do the writing and the publishing doesn't mean to say that all of my clients actually go on to publish a book. Excuse me, some of them are actually writing to heal themselves, or writing to get to know themselves and see themselves in a new light. They're doing it to get rid of imposter syndrome. And it's the same with this alienation of others and the othering that we do. So, for example, when Nartha and I were traveling around the Balkans, so, oh, you're going to Eastern Europe? No, we're going to the Balkans, because Eastern Europe is an othering. It's an alienation, because the people in Western Europe and Northern Europe, we didn't want the poorer cousins, those people in those poor countries. So we kind of put a distinction, an invisible barrier. It's like one of my ultimate heroes, Nawal El-Saadawi. If you don't know who this woman is, go and find out. She really does pull apart in, when people say the Middle East, it's the Arab world. And she says, where is it middle to? It's middle from London, and the Middle West. If you just look for Noelle El-Saadawi, she breaks down the colonial language so beautifully and brilliantly. And she does it with her. She's just got such a great way about her. You'll realize why I love her so much when you actually look into her. But again, looking at all of these things that you can really bring into yourself, all these things that you learn about yourself when you travel, when you're living in all these different countries, or you're writing about yourself. And it really is such an amazing wake-up call, and it shows you where you're not accepting yourself, because the things you're not willing to accept about others, is that a reflection of what you're not willing to accept about yourself? If you're not willing to accept a certain set of manners, what is that representing to you? you know, like with the feet on the table. Get your shoes off the table. You know, I like to be what I call intelligently lazy. I clean. You know, I'm very good at cleaning. And I do love cleaning when I put my music on and I'm going full out and like I'm having a proper hard house dance and techno dance around the apartment with my music on and cleaning. But I'd rather keep it a minimal. I'd rather have as least amount of dirt come into my home so that the cleaning doesn't take so long. And I always had a rule when I was, you know, like if my home is so big I can't hear my children in their bedroom or in the next room, my home is too big. And if it takes me more than 3 hours to clean from top to bottom, it's too big. I want to be able to hear my family. I want us to be together in the home. And if I've got to spend more than 3 hours cleaning my home, you know, one, how dirty is it? But two, do I really need all that space? You know, when you're learning the language, you're learning phrases, you're learning a new dance. You know, the different languages, some of them are head languages, like Germanic languages, they're very head, they're very logical, you know, and then you've got the soul languages that which I call like the Arabic languages, they're like soul languages. And then you've got the physical you know, the sexy languages of Latin America, like the Spanish and the Italian, they're just, oh, you know, and again, it's about looking at the energy of the land. And when you go and live in a new country, you have this, it is a bit exhausting to begin with because you're absorbing so much. The stuff that you can't see, stuff that a lot of you are probably not aware of, but you're picking up new energetic signatures from the land, from the language, from the food, from the water, from the air. You know, how everything is constructed, the ecosystems that are around, and the geographical systems, and it's just like a sensory overload. And if you allow yourself just to flow into it rather than forcing it, you will just, oh, it's such a beautiful experience moving into a new country and learning about how people do something, asking all these questions. And, you know, oh, it's such a juicy experience when you allow it to happen and unfold naturally. And people are more than willing to invite you for dinner and, you know, involve you and share with you. And people love telling stories. And it's, oh, it's such an enriching experience traveling and living in new countries, really is. And you learn some really great recipes. If, like me, you're a foodie, you know, you learn some really quick and easy recipes, but you also learn how to prep vegetables in a different way. Like some of the ways I prep vegetables now and fruits and salads and things, I'm like, man, they take me half the time that it used to take me. And I trained as a chef, you know, back in the day. Again, when you're there and you're learning people's histories and you're learning about, you know, their cultures and, you know, why they are the way they are, and if they are, you know, standoffish with you, or if they are a certain way, like for example, a lot of people from Poland, you know, people think they're very cold individuals, you know, very stern looking, but they're very warm people. The problem is they've got, you know, they, when you look at, you know, the surrounding climates and the both political climates and the geographical climates, you know, and the ecosystems. And there's this, you know, they've got a lot going on at the moment. They're bordering, you know, Ukraine, and you know that there's all of that, and there's, you know, that they've had a harsh history, but a history that makes them such wonderfully giving people and very generous, very much like the Nicaraguans, very much like the Lebanese people. That because they've experienced war, they've, you know, and I've not yet been to Central and Southern Africa, so I've still got to do that, and I haven't been to Asia yet, so I still need to do that area of the world. But again, it's like when you go to these different places and you start to understand and respect and acknowledge the histories and the political events that possibly your own country has inflicted on these other countries, then you start to unlearn and who you are, and you start to let go of prejudices yourself. And when we understand that the propaganda that is out there in the world is there for a reason. It is propagating a political or ideology or a political agenda to stop us from going to certain places so that we can impact their tourism negatively. So people are afraid to go. So people end up afraid of them, or people are afraid to visit their country because it's full of terrorists, or there are going to be lots of gangs and lots of drugs and all of these horrible, nasty, warlords and everything. But when you actually get there and you meet the people, you're like, what happened? Like, I thought you were all supposed to be like this, and I thought this was going to happen, and I thought this, and you find real beauty. So when you travel, forget about all of the other bullshit that the media has projected onto you. Remember, as I said before, it's not yours. Return to sender. That's just their ideology. That's their agenda. That's their wish for the world to be destroyed and divided, so it's easier to control, easier to conquer, so that we're all left in fear. Because remember, the system is not broken. The system is working exactly how it's meant to work. And it's designed in a way to keep us divided, to keep us living in fear, to keep us poor, uneducated, and unhealthy. Because then when we're worried about all of those things, we're not paying attention to all of the other stuff that's going on, such as genocides, and the extraction of minerals. So I was on a webinar this morning, and there's a lady said she only uses recycled gold. Good, because a lot of the gold, especially in North America, well, 86% of Latino gold is mined. I call it Latino blood gold, because 86% of the gold in the US monetary, oh my god, what's it, anyway, I can't even think of the word, but the treasury is made up of Latino blood gold. So any gold that you're buying from the States, be very mindful of where it comes from. The diamonds that you're using, again, look at where those diamonds are coming from. This is the same thing in my book, Alpha. I spoke about how the subtitle of that was Saving Humanity One Vagina at a Time. And that talks about female genital mutilation, but how the blood diamond trade was actually hiding what was going on with the human trafficking and the female genital mutilation, and how it was actually dividing and really destroying a lot of communities. But again, look at the batteries, the solar powers, the phones and the laptops, and these batteries that you have in your home. All of these elements, look at what they're doing to places in Central Africa and Southern Africa. Look at what we're doing to other lands just so that we can use a telephone and get a new iPhone, the latest iPhone. If you use Apple product, I mean, I wouldn't because of the new CEO, but there we go. Again, it's about looking at what, why do people in certain countries, if we go to certain countries, why do people resent us or resist us or not welcome us? For example, when I was going into some of the more dangerous, more poverty-stricken areas of the world, I wasn't going to rock up there in my Birkenstocks and my Chanels. No, I'm going in an old pair of trainers, because I would make myself a target. I would be going, look at me in all my finery, whilst you haven't got a pot to piss in and no food on the table. And that would be really insensitive. So again, it's about looking at these little things and unlearning your behavior. But go visit the museums, go to their art galleries, go to their libraries, go and find out and just sit with the people in the town square. Go and eat the food. Like when I was in Nicaragua, go and have my breakfast in the town square, and I'd be there and we'd be playing cards and I'd be writing and then having coffee and then pintacao. We'd spend all day in the town square. The families, I couldn't walk down the street in Messiah without having somebody invite me to join their community, because they could see I was on my own. They didn't do it because I was, the only solo white woman there. It was because that's what they do. They did it with other people. It was like, we're a community here. Nicaragua is a beautiful country. Oh my God, I love Nicaragua, especially Leon. Appeals to my the activism in me, but go and learn and unlearn. And coming up to wrapping up, what baggage can you let go of? Because I remember when I was traveling through Patagonia, I was coming out the top end, though, leaving to go to El Calafate. And I was packing in my backpack, and I was like, why the fuck do I have all this shit? And remember, baggage, it's the baggage we keep says a lot about the baggage we have going on internally. If you're a hoarder, you're not prepared to let go of the past. You have to keep these things. There's a fear of letting go on a lot of levels. Why are you keeping all of that stuff? You don't need it. Let it go. And you know why you've got to tap into that, because the baggage that you have and the possessions that you have, they are trapping you. Like the middle class, you know, the trappings of the middle class world. A lot of people, that they have to have all these things to present to the world a higher view of themselves. I'm still, I mean, I've got two wardrobes, a big chest of drawers, and I hardly get any clothes because I don't need them. You know, yes, I could want them, and yes, I could have them, but do I need them? Really? What do we need? You know, to fulfill a hole within ourselves, or to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. Let go of all of that baggage. Let go of the attachments, you know, where my books are is where my home is. No. Although, yes, but no. I'd be in these boxes, these lovely boxes behind me, where my books are. Again, some of those books will, you know, they will go into storage, and then I'll be taking up landmass, and you know, but it's there for my study. And as soon as I've done my study, I'll gift the books. Again, it's a cycle. What do I need? Why do I need it? If I don't need it, let it go. Release it to somebody else. Another man's rubbish is another man's treasure, as we used to say. Again, none of us own the land, and none of us own this space, these borders. You know, I all of this land ownership and property ownership actually saw wars start before we owned land. And it's explained in the book Humankind, A Hope for History, by Bergman. And he explains, you know, what happened. Like they were looking at why have humans been so much warmongers? And it only happened, and it only started when we started owning things. You know, are our possessions and this piece of land so important? Ask the ramblers of Britain, you know, when we're walking through fields, you know, just going up and exploring the countryside. Some farmers are so territorial, they're blocking off a footpath, a footpath. That they're so worried about their crops getting damaged by these rowdy ramblers, you know, that are destroying everything in their wake. Well, no, we're just walking. We're not interested in, you know, damaging your crops. We're not setting fire to them. We're not taking them to sell. We're just walking along the path, and we have a right to do so. And remember that, you know, the more you travel, like I said, the more you learn about others, the more you learn about yourselves. And through that, I see the world through 44 lenses. And I'd like you to imagine that if you are being resisted in different areas, and this is something that I've had to relearn how to be in Britain, because there are a lot of people that travel here in Britain, but they don't travel. They go on holiday to different countries, and they stay in all-inclusive or exclusive locations, but they don't travel. And that's really important to make that distinction. You might have gone on holiday to lots of different countries, but have you actually traveled to those countries? And have you learned about the country? Have you learned about the cultures and the mannerisms and the food and the music? And have you allowed your energy signature and your body and your soul to be welcomed and absorbed part of where you've been, to make yourself a richer individual and a more forgiving, more welcoming, and more inclusive individual? And have you let go of your conscious and unconscious prejudices? Because the thing is, when you live in a homogenized, monocultural, mono-ethnic community, then you will have some level of wariness of other cultures and other beings. But if you're from a country that's where there's been lots of migration, you know, the Latinos, yeah, just the beautiful people, like Latin America, like the Arab world, they've been some of our oldest travelers around the world. And when I look back to where I grew up, a lot of the people, they are racist, but they're unconsciously racist. And when I talk to a lot of my friends here in Britain, and they don't think that there's a lot of racism, and oh no, I mean, yeah, but what about this? See, the thing is, my children are Arab, and both of my sons look very different, and I see how people treat them differently. And I also then see how they always think that me and my eldest son we're in a relationship, because there's no way I could possibly have given birth to someone of that ethnicity. Still in 2025. And times when I've crossed borders with my children when they were younger, and I had to prove that I was their mother because I was trafficking children just because they had Arabic names. Yeah, we still deal with that. And that is like an unconscious bias, an unconscious level of racism and prejudice. So even though we don't think that we're racist in some ways, and sometimes I might have some of that, you know, bring it to my attention. I'm all willing to dismantle that about me. And that's the beauty of traveling and living in different countries and living in different communities, tapping into your unconscious prejudices. And remember, I am wrapping up now, I promise. We're on the final slide. Your travels, and this is one of the things that I'm learning, that there are a lot of people who think that they know about the world. I don't even know about the world, and I've studied and traveled and researched lots of cultures, and I'm still learning about the world. But there are people who live in one place who think they know everything about the world, and they think they know how everything is, and you might intimidate them. So when you return home, expect a backlash, because you've triggered somebody just by traveling, and you will have shown them where their ignorances are. And a lot of people haven't got an answer for all the problems that they love creating in the world. Because like the meme, I think it's a meme, says, you know, there are some people for every there's never, I can't remember how it goes, but there are some people who would moan that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. There are some people that will moan that, you know, the sun comes out every day. There are just some people that you will trigger just for being you. But just keep being you. Keep learning about everybody, because like I said, the more you know about others, the more you know about yourself. And if we really truly do want global peace, it is about traveling. It's about understanding and embracing new cultures and learning about different practices and rituals and ways of being. Because we always think we're right, then, you know, we're a bit of shit, really, aren't we? We're a bit arrogant. And soul always knows. So remove everything that's blocking you from having access to your soul, the processed food, the smoking, and all of that, because soul always knows. And always choose wisely, and choose joy and choose you. And thank you so much. That is that session over today. If you would like to have a narrative coaching session with me, then we are back now. We've only got one in 20 minutes. We've got these ones here. So do book a time with me if you really would like to. And if you'd like to read more about my books, here we go, dawnbates.com. There are my books here. There's so many to choose from. Look at all those lovely books. We are adding more and more as we go. So if you would like, this is the book that has inspired this series, and this is Alpha, the book that I mentioned earlier on. So please do purchase one of my books, and look out in the next coming weeks for the new book bundle reader experiences that we will be releasing in time for the holidays, and for Christmas gifting, and permanently. So there we go. Have a really, really wonderful time. Thank you for all of you who have shown up and who are also watching on the recording, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. Take care for now. Ciao, ciao.